Hi, and welcome, friends new and old, and future friends. I'm Ethan. I'm the college essay guy, and I'm excited you're here, and I'm grateful that you're here at this, we'll call it festive time of year, and it is a festive time of year. By way of check-in, because we'll probably start close to on time. By that I mean we'll do a little, hey, how are you? Who's out there? And then we'll get right into the content. So here's my check-in question. Well, first of all, I love hearing where folks are calling in or logging in from. So feel free to just share hi where you're at. Lisa from San Diego, what's up? And feel free to share in the chat box. We had about 750 people sign up. We'll see how many show up. It is a busy time of year. Counselor, are you working on some essays? Is that something that you're doing? If so, here's the check-in question. What is one of your biggest struggles when it comes to advising students on their essays? We've got Miami in the house, Willington, Rochester, Brazil, cool, Valencia, up the street from me, Tacoma. Mark says working on essays, hell yeah. What's up, Honolulu? Hi, Gina. Tri-Cities. Let's shift it. So what is one of your biggest struggles when it comes to advising students on their essays? I'm hoping that something that I'll share today will give you something to think about and give you more tools on your tool belt. Boy, if that phrase isn't overused in conferences. This is my session from NACAC a few weeks ago, NACAC 2018 in Salt Lake City. You'll see my actual slide. There's my actual NACAC slide. I actually started with that on the board though, because I wanted folks to be thinking about, well, what is the thing that I'm struggling with? That's something that I'll hope to cover in the session. If not, we'll have some time for Q&A at the end. Heads up, I'm gonna go fast. Why I love to go fast. Part of it is, I think I know that I can get more content, more information and another part of it is something that I'll share in just a moment when I model an exercise for you. But some good things are coming in. I want you to keep filling in the chat box because I'll get to these questions at the end. What are some of the, struggles that you have? How to avoid giving too much help, Philip. That's a huge one. That's a whole other session. Way too many essays, Lisa. I don't know that I'm going to solve that one today. Actually, I can help solve that one. I do have a thing for that. Finding a topic that's not common language, hard for essays not to sound cliche. This is all the resources that I'm going to share in the next 40 minutes are going to be personal statement focused. Some of the things that you're mentioning have to do with supplemental essays. And I've got a whole other session on that I believe is available on my site. If not, maybe I'll just do a redo of that one too, because I've got a bunch to say about organizing the supplemental essays. It's a whole, I did a 3-hour pre-conference session at NACAC on this, and I have a whole, course on the supplemental essay. So maybe we'll get into that a little bit at the end. But what you're about to get for the next 40 minutes is personal statement focused. Now, some of this stuff will apply, like, the pre-work will apply, but put your seatbelt on. Here we go. All right. If you really knew me, so I'm going to model this. This is an exercise that I love to start workshops off with. If you were with me live, I would have you do it with a partner, but I'm not going to have you do it with a partner. We'll just save the time for Q&A. So if you really knew me, the other side, the flip side to going fast. So like I said, I like to go fast in sessions because I believe that I can get a lot more content in and because my brain works super fast. Like I was the kid playing Monopoly with my sister and little brothers and like running the bank and running the property, that sometimes maybe annoying kid. But if you really knew me, some of the time I think I go fast because I'm trying to stay ahead of like the fastest student in the room. So like I have like my imagined, class out there of you all. And I'm like wanting to go fast because I worry that if I'll go slow, then you're going to be kind of bored or maybe think I'm dumb. And so it's like connected to like a feeling of like a fear that, oh, if I go too slow, I'm going to bore somebody. So my medicine for that, you can hear me doing it now, is like slowing down. Now I'm pausing for a second because I've run out of things to say and I'm asking myself, so what? So what? Why am I sharing this with you? Well, in part, I'm trying to just model this exercise, but let's go deeper. My deeper value here is I'm trying to be a little vulnerable with you and allow you to get to know me a bit better. Deeper value. Also why I think it's fun. I think it's kind of fun to like share with you that some part of me feels like not enough or that I might be, I'm doing this because I feel that I worry that I might be dumb. Why? The vulnerability thing, because of the personal statement. I think that's what we're trying to do and model for students. but so what? Because in a workshop setting, I'm trying to help students get into their heart, right? Get out of your head and get into your heart. Share with me something that might get me to know you on a deeper level. You know, who is the real you? That's a little bit ambiguous. I realize that. If we were here live together and like in a room, I would say, okay, do this. Now, I want to share with you the pieces of what I'm doing because I think this is a great exercise for helping students either in a one-on-one setting or in a group workshop setting, for getting into situating them in the place of the personal statement. So you begin with, if you really knew me, and you just finish the sentence. Once you pause, which is what I did, I ask myself, so what? And then I'm trying to drive deeper to a value, something that's meaningful to me. We got dogs, y'all. By the way, did I mention there will be dogs? There will be maybe helicopters. There might be like cement trucks coming by. Each time that happens, that's my reminder to hydrate. I invite you to do the same. It's also my reminder to slow down. Also connected to a deeper value of like calm, of like, what is that value? Enoughness, like self-love, I suppose. Trying to connect to a deeper value. And then I invite students when I do this and counselors to allow themselves to be seen, which is what I'm trying to do with you now. Sharing a current challenge, like something that's up for you right now, which is this thing is up for me right now. Like I sometimes still go too fast. Sometimes that can lead to a new insight. So if we were to do this together, it would take a couple minutes, but what's the point of this? Well, I think this exercise really has three qualities of a great personal statement in it. So it's got the vulnerability one. Right. And I call this vulnerability training. Like sometimes we need to practice this thing, this opening up thing. And this is a really simple exercise. It takes 1 minute. In partners, it takes just 2 minutes to allow, like I said, students to kind of situate them. And you see me like motioning to my heart of where the personal statement in my mind and in my heart should come from. Second, it invites some really cool qualities like, you know, getting students to think about their core values. Like, so if you ask yourself, so what, that can actually lead to insights or these, you know, what I call so what moments and can get us deeper into like what's really meaningful to us. So simple game. It's the first resource I wanted to share with you. Here's how the session will go. Intro, I'll keep it brief. 118 college essay resources. I'm going to go fast, but there will be a moment or like a little section where I'll slow down and I'm going to ask you to get a pen and paper for that part. So feel free to do that now. And then we'll do Q&A. And this is pretty much what I gave at NACAC. So if you were at the NACAC session, I'm going to be using probably some same jokes. I'm wearing a different shirt, but same mala beads, same silly glasses. Anyway, you should already have the handout from this session, that, you know, the invitation. But if somebody forwarded you this and you're seeing this, then you can just email help@collegeessayguy.com and just put NACAC 2018 handout, and Alex will send you the handout. All right. So here's some facts about me that qualify me to sit in front of you here today. I went to Northwestern and UC Irvine, studied performance and English. And, you know, I've got a couple counseling certificates. I've spent more than 13 years teaching and thinking about college essays, to be honest. This was my job out of college. And I've got some certifications floating around. And I'm the college essay guy because no one else was the college essay guy when in 2011, I searched on GoDaddy.com college essay guy. I was like, oh, that could be me. I've spent a lot of time thinking about that. And I'm Zola's dad. Zola, who's in the next room watching something, some kind of cartoon, I think. I also love buffets. That's what you should know about me. The Bellagio is my favorite. Raise your hand if you've been to the Bellagio. I love it for the unlimited seafood, the crab legs, the desserts for show, the meats. I know I'm kind of eating vegetarian, so this is kind of like an old slide. I think I was vegetarian actually when I ate there, but they've got tons of the meats. And I mentioned the desserts. I'm mentioning this to you because I'm about to share with you 118 college essay resources. Imagine that each of these is a dish that you could just consume and go back and get seconds of. Please do not try and eat everything. In other words, your brain would kind of get tired if you tried to like glom on to everything. So it's okay to be like just sort of, you know, taking it in, you know, grabbing a little of this and a little of that. You can always come back later. All this is on my website, by the way. There are 3 things to remember when teaching, says Lola May. Know your stuff, know whom you're stuffing, and then stuff them elegantly. And let me just see. Oh, good. Okay, cool. it was, someone said that it was Devin. If you have any technical questions, you can just type in the chat box, and Devin, my brother, who's on the call, will help you figure it out. Okay, so please don't end up like this guy, which is a guy who actually showed up as, when I searched Bellagio Buffet, he actually popped up as in the search results. Okay, here we go. So here are the 5 questions that I get all the time, and I use this as the framing device. For what we're going to talk about. Number 1, how do I figure out what to write about? Which is to say, how do we help students find the content? Pick a topic. Number 2, how do we help students structure the essay? Which is to say, make it flow. That's what they usually ask me. How do I make it flow better? We'll talk about that. How do we outline the essay? So here's like a little step-by-step guide to like making sure we have like what I call the bones of the essay, which is connected to structure, but is a little bit different. And I'll explain how in a minute, in about 25 minutes. How do I revise the essay? Which is to say, making sure everything is working together. How do I bring the essay to life? I'll give a few tips on that. AKA how to make it not boring, which is usually what students want to know how to do. All right. So let's get into the first one. How do we know what to write about? How do we help students find a topic? One of my favorite exercises, and I'm not going to do it with you right now, but I'll just tell you about it because you can Google it, is the essence objects exercise. So if you've read my book, you've seen this one. This involves picking something that is specific to you that represents something that's a deeper meaning, right? So an essence object for me would be, I'm just looking around. I'm on my porch, so I'm just looking to see if I have any essence objects out here. I don't know that I do. You know what I do? If you look behind me, and you can kind of see right here, here's like a pumpkin. It's a pumpkin that we carved, my wife and my daughter and I carved last night. It's a little jack-o'-lantern. And what that represents to me is like creating with my daughter and with my wife, like making things with our hands. It's something that my wife is really, really good at with my daughter. And it's something that I said months ago. I was like, oh, I want to be better at that. I want to be better at creating with her. So this pumpkin that we created last night is actually evidence to me that like, maybe I'm getting better at this. What's the deeper value? Connection, family, building, creating. You know, I really want to call those forth, those qualities in my daughter. What else? There's a basketball that in my mind that actually there's an actual one that was North Carolina blue that's worn down at the edges that I actually had as a kid. My dad and I used to play a lot of basketball growing up. So this worn North Carolina basketball would represent my connection with him. What's another one? You kind of see what I'm doing here? I'm basically coming up with specific concrete things, and they could be metaphors too. So like one thing that I don't physically own, but that is, you know, sort of a deeper, oh, this is an interesting one. I haven't really shared about this one. Wow. This is an interesting one. I haven't shared about this one publicly ever. So my mother, when I was in 7th grade, bought me a promise key, which was basically a promise between me and my parents and God that I would remain abstinent until I was married. And that to me represents a lot. It would take me a while to get into all of the nooks and crannies of that one, but it represents being raised in the church, promises that I would make to God and to myself, and how I kept those and how I didn't, and like shame around promises I didn't keep, related to all kinds of things in my life. That one is rich. There's a personal statement topic. The goal here with this exercise is to basically get students to poke in and around to different parts of their lives, but to concretize them through images, because images often create much more interesting stories, right? So that's a 10-minute exercise. You can Google it if you've never done it. The second exercise, which is related, takes about 4 minutes, and it involves asking someone to identify their top 10 values based on a menu of values. So if you just were to Google values exercise or values exercise college essay guy, you'll see this one. You can download a PDF. I use it in so many contexts with students. One of them is in a workshop setting, or at the beginning of the process, I ask them to identify these top 10 values and then whittle it down to 5, and then 3, and maybe 1. And can students then start to think about, okay, well, how do these values manifest in my life? So I'm working on a new book, and it's really the whole idea of the book is how do we figure out what's important to us, and then how do the things that are important to us manifest themselves in our lives, right? So like if I were to check off family from my list, and one of the ways it manifests itself is like carving Halloween pumpkins with my wife and daughter. How then might I manifest that in the application, in the college application? Is sort of what we're getting towards, right? What we're drilling down to. This exercise is good at the beginning, in the middle of the process, when we're sort of starting to assess, well, in this college essay, which values are coming through? Are there many or not so many? And then at the end of the process, did my top values, the values that I identified at the start of the process as important to me, did those actually end up in my application? So all great questions and all connected to this little values menu. I sound like I'm talking about McDonald's, the values menu. My favorite prompt, though, is describe the world you come from and tell us how it's shaped your dreams and aspirations. Favorite because it was the one that I worked on so much with students on the old University of California prompts, and now it's MIT prompt, but very short. I believe that the essence objects exercise can really help students to identify the world that they've come from. Okay, I can give them images, in some case, some potential topics, or at least details. And then that values exercise, I believe, our values are intimately connected to who we are becoming. And in some sense, our dreams and aspirations. So when I say to you, you say, who do I want to be when I grow up? Well, I want to be let's say I want to be a doctor, or let's say I want to be a college essay guy. Said no one ever. But the values help me understand what are the pieces of me that I want to experience and express through this career. So let me simplify that for you. Rather than thinking of the career as the be all end all, the career is actually the means by which we're experiencing and expressing our values, right? So that's the dream or the aspiration. And this is also really good for students who don't know what they want to do. They can still talk about, well, what do you think is going to be important to you in the future? They can usually identify some values. More on that shortly. Here's the pre-work that I give to all my students. And again, if you didn't receive the little, I created a little worksheet that will allow you can basically just share this with students. It's a Google Doc with all of these exercises on it. If kids are just getting started, you can just be like, hey, here's a link, brah. And they can work through the essence, objects, and values exercise. I've got a little video attached where I basically walk them through that. And then something called the 21 details exercise, which basically involves asking students to come up with a random list of 21 random facts about themselves. It can be great for supplemental essays too, by the way. And then a separate question, which is on what do you want colleges to know about you? Make a list of everything you want colleges to know. You can draw it on a sheet of paper, or put it on a Google Doc or Microsoft Word doc. So I have them do those, and those essence objects takes about 12 minutes, 15 at the most. Values exercise takes 4 minutes. 21 details might take about 21 minutes if they do like a minute per detail. Everything I want colleges to know about me maybe takes 15 minutes or so. Then I have students create something called their supplemental essay tracker. And if you're working with students in the fall, which you may be doing right now, I recommend putting together a list of what are all the supplemental essays that the student's working on. So my favorite way to do this, actually, and this has been shared with you as well, but again, if any of this stuff, if you're like, hey, I didn't get this resource, just email help@collegeessayguy.com and Alex will shoot it over to you. But I have them create this thing, which is basically a supplemental essay tracker. Okay. And if you want to find this one, you just Google how to create a great college list. And this is on there. The way to find prompts, I find, is this is my favorite way to do it. Let me just share with you my other screen for a second. It'll take me just a second. Here we go. This is you're going to see my Google death clock, by the way. This is how many, based on average life expectancy, this is how many days, hours, minutes, and seconds I have left. Make them count. Okay. So here's my, can you see this? I hope you can. Let me see if you can see this. I don't know if you can actually. For some reason, this doesn't show up for everybody, unfortunately, for some reason. So if you see this little blue thing I'm clicking, what you're not seeing is that there's a little pop-up on my screen of a little blank where you type in the school. So I type in like Tulane, for example, and I hit enter. It gives me Tulane. I click on it. I click general freshman application, and up comes, I really wish you could see this, basically all the supplemental essays. It's a really fast way of finding them. You don't have to kind of go digging through the Common App. So you'll find this by just Googling that phrase, Alpha Chrome extension. I'm just going to go back to my other screen now. Okay. And again, that's actually, I think, in the email I sent. Highly recommend that. So once you find that, take all those prompts, put them all there. I tell the student to just put the name of the school, the prompt, the word limit, and then the topic they've chosen. This is a great way to sort of see which prompts can potentially double and triple with different topics. So that to me is a great way to save time. And I'll share a little bit in the Q&A about another way to help students think about their, what I call super topics, which is to say topics that can be used for different prompts. A question I love in terms of the content is this my deepest story? Now, just asking this question does a cool thing to students where they'll go, like, some will hear that question and they'll be like, yeah, I feel like this is my deepest story. Cool. That gives us some good information about how to help that student. Other times they'll be like, you know, especially, and it's a good question too, if a student seems kind of like connected to a topic that may not be revealing a lot about them. Another great question I love is like, what is this essay revealing about this student? There's another resource. Why is that a great question? Because if you feel like it's a really leading question that the essay is not revealing a lot, and how could you help them figure that out? Like, well, what values you're learning about the student? It could be that it's all just like one value, like hard work. And you could tell this kind of guide the student and be like, well, you have a 3.7. Like, I know you work hard, or you're able to. So those two questions, I'm kind of smuggling in another question here. Is this my deepest story? Can help students to really think about, is this my topic? Now, if students are working on this in October, November, this might be a dangerous question to ask them because it might blow up their whole essay. Having said that, I always tell students the best time to start over your essay is right now, because right now you have more time than you'll ever have to basically, create a new essay. So proceed with caution. All right. So how do we structure the essay? How do we help students figure out what are the bones of the essay? How is it working? Again, my favorite prompt, describe the world you come from and how it's shaped your dreams and aspirations, points the way here. So when working with students on the world they come from, some students have been through challenges and they would identify them as challenges and want to write about them. And some students haven't, think they haven't, or don't want to write about them. So one question I like to ask is, do you have challenges that you'd like to write about in your essay, or not so much? And, some students are like, yeah, I totally do. And others are like, I'm not sure. And some are like, no challenges. Okay. Next question, dreams and aspirations. Do you have a sense of like what you want to be or do, a vision for your future? It's fun to ask this in a room full of counselors at NACAC. I asked, who knows what they want to be when they grow up? And like, nobody raised their hand. And then I was like, who's still figuring it out? And like, all 500 counselors were like, raised their hand. And I was like, this is so cool. It's a great question to ask students just in terms of helping them think about, well, what path might my essay take? Because if you take these two questions, the answers split into 4 types of essays. Now, these are not types of students. In other words, this is not like a student who has faced significant challenges and knows what they want to study, like therefore has to write this type. This is just the type of essay that might be produced. So for students who have faced challenges and want to write about them and want to write about their course of study in their main statement, we'll call that a type A essay. Students who have not faced challenges or believe they haven't or don't want to write about them, but do want to write about their course of study or something about their future, that's a type B essay. Students who have faced challenges but don't have a clear vision for the future, type C. No challenges, don't know what they want to write about, don't know what they want to study, type D. Now, this is a problematic grid, right? Because I'll say this to students and they'll still be like, do I have to write about challenges? And I'm like, no. Great students write great stories that get into great colleges with all types of essays. Do I have to know what I want to talk about? No, there are even reasons to not write about your future course of study. So it's problematic giving students a grid. Having said that, some students see this and they're like, ooh, okay, this is doable. There's a path for me. So that's this overly simplistic way of thinking about the storytelling process can be a way in for a lot of students. Okay, but I just want to acknowledge to you, the counselor, that I recognize that it's problematic. So narrative structure helps guide those students who've been through challenges. Whereas montage structure helps guide those students who haven't been through challenges or necessarily don't want to write about them. Okay. So let me tell you more about what these. Narrative structure makes causal connections, which is to say it tells a story where A led to B, led to C, led to D, and finally I'm at this point in my life. I'm at E point in my life. Whereas montage structure jumps around in space and time and says, oh, here's this cool quality. And then there's this, I love koala bears. And, oh, I founded this nonprofit. And, oh, by the way, I play hockey in my spare time and collect coins, right? That's pretty extracurricular heavy essay. But, you know these montage essays, they're jumping around, showing different qualities or different moments, different images, not necessarily challenges based. The narrative structure basically goes like this. And you can find more about this if you just Google college essay guide narrative structure. But it begins with status quo. I was really shy, for example, in this student's essay. This is like the starting point, the world of the essay, as it were. And by the way, this is like every movie ever. Raising the stakes lets us know why this is an important thing for her to overcome. I needed to get over it because I needed to translate for my parents. She tried all these things and she failed. So it's like, Then she joins a debate club, which is called the inciting incident. This is now the moment that is like the worst thing for this person to like do. And it's also the call to adventure in the Joseph Campbell monomyth. Denouement, all this stuff happens. I did this, I did this, I did this. Learned some stuff along the way. And then new status quo. Now I'm the kid up at the whiteboard, the kid leading discussions, standing up for her beliefs. So we see that kind of classic change, that catharsis. Here I was with the problem. I did some stuff that didn't work to figure it out. And then I did this thing, which was a really big risk. And actually, I learned some stuff. And then here's who I've become as a result. So that's the narrative structure. Great for students who are overcoming challenges or who have overcome challenges. And it can help get students who've faced a lot to squish those challenges into the first part of the essay, right? So that we get more of that denouement, the what you did about it and what you learned. Sometimes I'll just say this to students and I'll even walk them through how this works in Pixar films. And they'll be like, I have a path. That's what I'm trying to do here, is give them some rails to put the train on. Other students, here's another example. The student was always curious and he wanted to talk about his curiosity. He also wanted to talk about how he loved working with his hands. He was detail obsessed, a math nerd, loved sharing his knowledge with others, helping others. How does this all connect? Well, in this case, he knew what his career was going to be. So these were all, qualities that would help him in his future as an endodontist, which is not easy to say. And again, you can find more on this. Just Google endodontist essay, college essay guide. Now, how did he write this? He reverse engineered it. So he basically came up with, well, here's the thing I want to do. How do I show different qualities and parts of myself that would demonstrate to a reader that, I've got some valuable things to offer? I'll get more into the specifics of that in just a minute. But as you can see, not necessarily about overcoming a challenge. It's like, here are 4 to 7 random things about me, but they're not so random because they all connect into this common theme. I think a great essay either goes deep, talking about a moment or a series of moments, usually challenges that fundamentally change the way that student is thinking about or thought about the world, or it goes wide, discussing with wide, variety, and lots of color. By color, I just mean, differences, lots of details, different parts of that student. Now, a great essay can do both, can discuss all these different parts of them with depth. It's hard to do, but it's possible. Narrative structure helps students go deep. Montage helps them go wide. Water break. All right, so how do we help students outline their essay? I call on my good friend, I don't remember what this actor's name was, Chunk from Goonies. And my first way is I encourage folks, I encourage students to think of the big chunks of their essay. Now, what do I mean by the big chunks of the essay? Well, if Aristotle taught 3rd grade, he might give an exercise like this. What is the beginning of the story? What's the middle? And what's the end? I know this sounds super basic, but when students start to get all kind of tangled in their heads, if you just ask them, hey, give me 3 parts of your essay. What's the beginning? What's the middle? What's the end? Okay. And what we can start to see when we do that is that maybe this story doesn't have an end yet, or maybe it doesn't have a very compelling beginning, right? Now, that doesn't mean that the student has to start at the beginning. The student could certainly start at the end and then be like, wait, let me go back. Then give us context. We see this a lot. Quentin Tarantino, lots of films. We also see it in essays, right? But we got to figure out what is the beginning, what is the middle, and what is the end. Now, just to give a couple quick examples. The with debate essay, the big chunks of that essay, and when you read it, you'll see that there's lots of nice little details. But basically, it's a story about part A, a student who was shy. That's the challenge. So what did she do about it? She joined debate. And then she came out of her shell. And in one sentence, it's like, this is a story about a girl who was shy, joined debate, and ultimately came out of her shell. Oh, and by the way, found some different cool qualities that would serve her in her future career. Like, that's the one sentence telling of that story. Whereas with the endodontist story, the student, was like curiosity, good with hands, meticulous, helping others. These are the chunks are like turned into the paragraphs of the essay in this case, actually. And that's why it's going to make him a great endodontist or a great dentist. Okay. So identifying those can really help a student just kind of go, okay, here's the clay that I'm molding with. Step 2 depends on the essay type. Okay. So let's get into this. This is like the 6-minute version of like an hour-long thing that I do on basically how to outline any essay. So Again, buffet, take little nibbles, and you're welcome to come back to the site for more. So if a student has faced challenges and wants to write about their future course of study or their, the dream or aspiration, the question is, how do you connect them? How do you get, I was shy to, I want to be an international diplomat? Okay. And I think the secret is through the values. They're like this magic glue that connects the past to the present and the future. So in the case of the essay that I just shared, by going through those experiences of being shy, she developed, as you'd see in the essay, critical thinking skills. She learned how to think and speak spontaneously, all of which would serve her in her future career as really anything: lawyer, teacher, in this case, international diplomat. Okay. So helping students to think about their values is helping them to brainstorm like the glue of the middle of the essay, which is really cool. An exercise for doing this, and I think we've got time. Do we have time? I want to save more time for Q&A. So even though I took time to do this, and I would highly recommend you taking some time to do it, you can actually Google this. You can Google the feelings and needs exercise. I actually am a little self-conscious that this is kind of a busy time of season, and I want to kind of give you the buffets. I'm just going to tell you about this exercise. And then if you want to do it on your own, you can just do it. The feelings and needs exercise, it's called. Let me pitch it to you though, because, ooh, horn honk, time to sip of water. This is the best exercise I've ever seen for developing college essay content. And if a student has faced challenges, if you're working with students many of whom have experienced challenges, get them in a room together for half an hour, walk them through this exercise, ask them these 6 questions, put on a little music, and you could actually begin with like the sort of, the if you really knew me exercise, just to kind of till the soil, and then get really real with them. And by asking these 6 questions, I'm actually not even going to tell you what they are because I want you to do the exercise. I think you can unlock a student's personal statement or help them unlock it in like 20 minutes. No joke. Like you could burn the rest of my book and just keep these like 10 pages. And that to me would be the most effective way of helping a student who's been through challenges find their essay topic. If you're interested, write it down, write yourself an email right now, check out feelings and needs exercise, or just Google it, copy and paste the link and email it to yourself because I'm not going to walk you through it right now. Da-dun, da-dun, da-dun. Okay. If a student has a career that they're really interested in, and there are certainly there are essays that ask, why do you want to study what you want to study? This exercise I'm about to share is really, really useful. So I mentioned this reverse engineering the essay. That endodontic student, I asked him, what are some qualities of a great endodontist? And he came up with this list right here that you'll see on the right side of your screen. Helping others, detail-focused, interest in the human body, curiosity. And then I asked him, well, just how do these manifest themselves in your life? And he gave me all these cool examples. It took him a little while to come up with these. So it can take some students a while. But this can end up being the building blocks, which is to say the big chunks of the essay. So the essay ends up being about these cool different parts of them. Now, of course, what he's smuggling in is I'm good at all these things, right? But we're actually hearing a nice story about a guy who always asked questions as a kid. And then a few years later, designed his own pair of shoes. Now, the trick of this essay is finding all of those transitions, which takes, in this case, it took him 8 or 10 drafts to find it. But eventually it sort of connected and was like, oh, I'm enjoying the story. And then, but bam, endodontist, what? That feels surprising. But also, given the qualities you've just shown me, it feels inevitable. And that, side note, is the key to a great essay, a great ending, I should say. Is it surprising in the sense that we didn't quite see that coming, but inevitable in the sense that like, yeah, that makes sense. I know, I told you I was going fast. If you want to help students find more qualities for their particular career, check out ownetonline.org. You'll find a gold mine. Check this out. You just type in the occupation here. Not that you need 2 arrows to see this. And then you'll get a list of like skills, particular to that career. I don't remember what I typed in here. But, critical thinking, active listening, social perceptiveness, negotiation, management of financial resources, all qualities would be kind of cool to find out if a student had if they were going into a particular career. So OwnNet Online, love it. Okay. If a student has faced challenges, but either doesn't know or doesn't necessarily want to put in their main statement their future career or future plans, how do they end the essay? Sometimes they ask. My answer is, oh, guess what? The values. Because no matter what a student's career is going to be, whether they're going to be a teacher or lawyer, those values that have, been forged in the fire of whatever challenge they've been through are going to be with them. So I highly recommend students to make sure that by the end of the essay, those values are clear. In fact, I'll tell them sometimes to not name the values explicitly in their essay, but at the end, that can give a kind of surprising but inevitable conclusion. Like, these are the things that are going to be important to me. Simple structure for students who, have faced challenges in their life. Again, if you're working with a population of students that have faced challenges, give them this. College essay guys, college essay guy approved 3-part structure. 25% on challenges, and then 50% on what I did about it, and 25% of the essay on the lessons you learned. Why do I recommend this? Well, you've seen it before. Students spend 75% on the challenges. But guess what? You don't get into college because your parents got divorced, or if you had difficulty learning a language, or fill in the blank, right? Colleges want to know how you metabolized the experience. You can use that phrase. How did you metabolize it? What did it do to your system? Okay. And then that's the second and third parts of the essay. That's the most important part. In fact, the challenges, even though they're important, they're really just the setup for me for demonstrating, how are you going to make valuable contributions on the college campus? And if I had to identify in a sentence, like, what is the college essay about? It's about demonstrating that you will make valuable contributions on the college campus and beyond. Okay. Parts 2 and 3 of that will do this. 18-minute video on this. You can just Google significant challenges college essay guy. D, how do you describe who you are and, what you're interested in if you don't really have a sense of, you haven't faced challenges, don't really know what the future holds? First of all, be patient. And this is a bunch of students. A bunch of students are in this category. I joke with them in workshops. I'm like, good luck, can't help you. But, I say to them, look, it just might take you a little bit longer to find your topic because it's wide open. With the other topics, with the other types, you've got something that you can kind of, build around. With this, it's kind of like, well, what do you want to write about? So what I don't tell students is I don't tell them to focus on a particular moment, because that's so hard to do. So I think that's bad advice, actually. Like, if I were to just write my college essay on my water bottle, there might be lots of other parts of myself that might be left out, even though it's one essence object. I'd rather tell you about this in one paragraph and then move on to other parts of me. So just so you know, with students that are in this type D essay category who are going to write this type D essay, I tell them to, first of all, let me get it. Let me just follow the slides. How about that? Here are a few options. I love Do What You Are. You can get this book. I know it's connected to Naviance, but I like the paper version. I'll just hand it to a student. You can get it for $1 on Amazon, or a penny. And, it helps students to think through, okay, based on my personality, the way that I think, the way that I make decisions, what careers might be interesting for me, and then use it as a placeholder. Go to OwnNet, type in the occupation, and then come up with a list of qualities that I could potentially show in my essay. And then at the end of the essay, you don't have to necessarily say, therefore, I want to be a lawyer, even though it seems kind of cool. You can say, no matter what I do, here are the values that are going to be important to me. Second, for students who have something that they're passionate about, that's the first time I use that word in this session. That's pretty good. They can find basically what they need. First of all, is a bunch of stuff, right? We talked early on, how do you generate a bunch of stuff? And I'll remind you of those exercises in a minute. The essence objects, 21 details, values, all of that stuff. Well, that's the first part of the essay. The second part we're talking about now is how do we connect it all through a focusing lens? And that focusing lens could be something that the student really loves, like scrapbooking. The student that I met who loved to scrapbook, so she decided to make the scrapbook of her life, and each image showed some different quality, some different value, a part of who she was, right? Another student might be obsessed with travel and languages. This is another one. You can Google this, travel and languages, or Google scrapbook essay. You can see those examples of montages that basically show lots of different parts of a student with an overarching umbrella that connected all the different pieces. But the student just may need more stuff to write about. They could come into your office and they could just be like, I have no idea what to write about. And you say, let me see your brainstorm. And they're like, I haven't really brainstormed. Well, then I would remind them, or I would share with them this Google Doc exercise of essence objects, values exercise, 21 details, and everything I want colleges to know about me. It'll take them about 45 minutes, but it's going to generate tons of stuff. Okay. And I'm mentioning them again because sometimes folks forget about them. So if you're worried that that you're not going to get the link or something, just screenshot this or just jot down these titles. They're all on the website. How do you generate more stuff? Well, sometimes students haven't really brainstormed with a partner yet. I know that sounds really basic, but it's a great idea. It's a really like low-hanging fruit idea. And if it didn't work with one person, like maybe it didn't work with you, their counselor, try it with mom and dad, or try it with a friend, or try it with an English teacher, right? You never know where that, gem is going to come from. Now, it's good to kind of check in with them and get kind of like, is this a great topic or not? But it's, I think it's a good idea. I love Use Science when there's time for it. It's a 90-minute thing that helps students, assessment that helps students figure out their interests and aptitudes. And, as I mentioned, do what you are. And then morning pages, especially when students have a little more time to just kind of get, in the morning, just 3 pages of freehand writing, like what's in my head. That can be another way of, it can feel random, but another way to just generate more content, more stuff. And do these really well. So what I like to say is that like better ingredients, better pizza, better ingredients, better college essay, right? So the student who has more stuff that they've done in the pre-work is going to have more ideas to draw on when they're trying to figure out like what to put in the stories, not just their personal statement, but the supplemental essays. I like to say also that they're not preparation for the work. The pre-work is the actual work. I shouldn't even call it pre-work. How do I revise the essay? We got about 9 minutes, and then I'm going to shift to Q&A. And I realized I'm doing an hour in 45 minutes. Here goes. So how do I revise the essay? Well, simple exercise that I put together. Got to fly. I put together when a student actually asked me via an email, can you help me with the flow of this essay? And I was like, oh my gosh, how do I succinctly come up with something to help her with the flow? Because it was all over the place. And so I looked back at a couple essays that I really liked. And one of them was this Endodontist essay. And I just read through the first sentences. And lo and behold, I found this. As a kid, I was always curious. And it didn't stop in 2nd grade. A few years later, I designed my first pair of shoes. In high school, I moved on to more advanced projects, teaching myself to take apart, repair, and customize cell phones. And once I obtained my driver's license, I started working on cars. My love of details applies to my schoolwork too. See what's happening? There's like it's like a short version of the essay, right? This is what I call the bones of the essay. How do you find them? You basically just highlight the first sentences of each paragraph in bold and then read them aloud to yourself. If they're flowing together, cool. If they're not, which is probably why you're doing the exercise, I tell students like, okay, rewrite the bones, right? And then rewrite the flesh, rewrite the sentences after them to make them work with the new bones. Okay, I'm using lots of different metaphors, train tracks, the bones. We're looking at the structure of the essay, the architecture of it, as it were, right? Now, I know this seems like an obvious exercise, and it's like, yeah, you're just telling them to come up with topic sentences. Kind of, and don't mention topic sentences, because if you said that to me as a high school student, I would have gone running 100 miles an hour in the opposite direction. Okay, maybe like 6 miles an hour in the opposite direction. Because to me, it's just like totally shut down, and it feels really formulaic. Don't tell them that. Just tell them that, hey, this is a simple structuring exercise. This will change the way they write, not just college essays, but other essays as well. I've gotten that feedback from students. It's a simple exercise, and you can actually find it by just Googling how to revise an essay in 5 steps. And I just will literally send the link to students when I think their essay's all over the place. If they figured out their content, I'm like, this is a good story, but it's just kind of like meandering, or this is a good topic, but it's meandering. Send them this exercise. You'll find sometimes, not always, but sometimes students will come back with a better draft. Okay. Again, this is like for those who are short on time, which at this time of year is probably a few of us. Yeah. So that's what you can Google. All right. How do we bring the essay to life? AKA, how do we make the essay not boring? Okay. I love this question. So here are 3 quick tips. And it's framed based on mediocre advice that I've either received or read or maybe even given in the past. So you hear this all the time. Choose a great opening. You got to have a hook. What is a great opening? What does a hook mean? How do I create a hook? Here's the advice I like to give. It's a little more actionable. Begin with a problem that must be solved. Couple examples. Here's a secret that no one in my family knows, the student writes. I shot my brother when I was 6. Luckily, it was a BB gun. But to this day, my older brother, Jonathan, doesn't know who shot him. And I finally promised myself to confess this 11-year-old secret to him after I write this essay. Love this opening. It raises so many questions. Why did he shoot his brother? Did his brother die? I don't think his brother died, but like, was he okay? What happens? What's going to happen after he tells him the thing? You know, what brought him to this point? Yeah. So anyway, in that essay, which you can also Google, I shot my brother essay, and find great question that raises all sorts of questions for us. You can, even though this is a challenges narrative structure, students can also use the question at the start of the essay in the montage structure. So it can work either way. Here are 18 ways to begin a college essay. Now, this is like kind of a joke because it's a piece of content that I'm working on right now. But this is a work in progress post that if you want to have access to, just make sure you're signed up for the email list, or just go to my website right now and sign up for the mailing list. And I will, as soon as I get a little time, probably around November 16th or 17th. Actually, no, I'm going to take a break. And then I'm going to work on this, how to begin a college essay. A little too late for these seniors, but hopefully for next year. Just a whole bunch of different ways that my brother Nick and I have found work pretty well. Some ways not so well. Like the thesis, a one-sentence summary of the final main idea of the essay, not so good in my view, and I'll explain that why in the blog post. The quotation, not so good, but there are all sorts of other ways to begin an essay. So more on that to come. I think we just made this session 118 resources, now 136. Show, don't tell. We get this advice a lot, right? This is from well-meaning and sometimes excellent English teachers pushing students to like think in terms of images. So I think that this is good advice in general for writing, but I think it's incomplete when it comes to the college essay. Why? Boy, I'm fired up. I think students need to show first, and then sometimes I think they need to tell. Like, I want that so what moment. I want that little gem. I want to know how it worked on you, what it meant to you. So I tell students to show first and then tell. Here's an example. Many nights you'll find me in the garage replacing a car's standard chrome trim with an elegant piano black finish. Beautiful image. Or changing the threads on the stitching of the seats to add a personal touch. You can just see him go, right? Beautiful show. But we kind of wonder, well, so what? What does this have to do with you? Watch what he adds. As I believe a few small changes can transform a generic product into a personalized work of art. Yes. Like, and he's doing that in this essay, right? So this is what will help set an essay apart from any other student who loves getting into the details or loves working with their hands, right? This little insight, which gives me goosebumps still to this day reading it, gives me a little sense of like what it means to you, okay? And I think those go well at the end of a paragraph. Better than the beginning. Why? Because if you flip that, a few small changes can transform a generic product into a personalized work of art. As I've seen working in the garage doing the like, to me, that's kind of like a thesis first model. And I just happen to think, and maybe this is just a personal preference, that thesis first model is great for the English class or for the why us essay where you're like mapping a path. But I think that for the personal statement, it's more interesting to bring that out in the end. It creates that surprising but inevitable little conclusion, mini conclusions, mini little aha moments that when you add a few of those up, you sort of go, this is a kid who's really thought about how their external world has impacted their internal world. Third one. Oh, I like to say this. The show demonstrates you're a talented writer, capable of coming up with images and thinking in pictures. The tell demonstrates that you're a critical thinker. This is sometimes one people like to, it sounds quotable, so people like to like screenshot this one. Be both is what I say. Oh, write what you know. This one always sends me into an existential tailspin. What do I know? What can be known? I don't know what I know. And I certainly didn't at 17. So I say instead, use geeky language. A little bit of jargon, a little dab will do you. For example, I'm the math geek who marvels at the fundamental theorems of calculus, or who sees beauty in A equals whatever that says. So what? Okay, so there's the show, right? Which has got some geeky language. There's some like fundamental theorems stuff. So what? Again, it's in the details. One bracket off or one digit missing and the whole equation collapses. Oh, that sounds bad. And details are more than details. They can mean the difference between negative and positive infinity, an impossible range of solutions. I could see how that would like apply to a lot of different things. So you see what's happening? This show, which is giving us some geeky language, saying, hey, I know some math stuff. I like to say, I know some stuff about some stuff. And I tell students, if you know some stuff about some stuff, get it into your essay. Maybe the fourth paragraph. Because if you start the essay with it, it might seem like you're bragging. Anyway, that's really getting into the details. But then give us the so what. And then, like this student did, maybe give us another so what. Something interesting is bound to happen. So what yourself. I like to tell students, I want there to be a little Ethan doll on your shoulder saying, so what? So what? If you want more brainstorming ideas, this is how we get to 100 and whatever. There's 100 and brave, interesting questions. If you just Google the phrase interesting question, it's like the 6th thing ranking there. People like brave and interesting questions. So that's, I think, 135 personal statement resources. If you'd like more on the supplemental essays, go to the website. So there's collegeessayguy.com/free. There's a ton on the supplements. I've spent a lot of time working on and thinking about that. We can spend in the Q&A here in a minute a little bit of time talking about specific questions about those, because I do heart the Why Us essay, and I've written a whole guide for it. The podcast, I've spent hours and hours interviewing some folks you know and love. The Ted Fisk from the Fisk Guide, talking about how to create a great college list. Bob Schaefer from, he does Test Optional 101. And then you can just like copy and paste these and send these to folks who are thinking about Test Optional, or like which colleges give the most money. Jeff Levy and Jenny Kent have put together these amazing sortable, searchable Excel docs that tell you exactly what the average financial aid award is and what percentage of students get those awards. Yeah, really? That's on the podcast. What else? I'm going to sell you guys on this. It's collegeessayguy.com/podcast. Should I apply early action or early decision? Something that's really fresh on some students and counselors' minds. There's a chart that will give you, that they've also created meticulously, all of the ED and RD like rates for each student, each school. Now, but it can help to know. Now this gets into like all sorts of interesting territory. It can help to know, for example, that what Claremont McKenna's, I'll just use Claremont McKenna as an example, what their ED rate is as opposed to their RD rate. I'll just leave it at that. Finally, I've got this college essay forum for counselors. If you just search that on Facebook, it's a private counselor Facebook group. We geek out on college essays. We'd love to have you there. We sometimes vent. We sometimes are like, hey, help, I've got a problem. Did anybody notice Northeastern dropped their supplemental essay prompt, for example? If you didn't, that happened. So this is a place we talk about things like that. Finally, and this will take us a little bit into the time, but I'm okay with that. I hope you are. I want to get to like sort of a bigger question of what is our role as counselors. And in fact, I set this context at NACAC because it was something that I was thinking about this year and the previous year. Like, why do we keep coming here? Why am I doing this? And then I think this is best expressed through a poem by Marge Piercy called To Be of Use, which I'm going to read to you. It'll be the last resource. And it's kind of like my love letter to you. The people I love the best jump into work head first, without dallying in the shallows, and swim off with sure strokes almost out of sight. They seem to become natives of that element, the black, sleek heads of seals bouncing like half-submerged balls. I love people who harness themselves, an ox to a heavy cart, who pull like water buffalo with massive patience, who strain in the mud and the muck to move things forward, who do what has to be done again and again. I want to be with people who submerge in the task, who go into the fields to harvest and work in a row and pass the bags along, who are not parlor generals and field deserters, but move in a common rhythm when the food must come in, or the fire be put out, or the college essay be written. The work of the world is common as mud. Botched, it smears the hands, crumbles to dust. But the thing worth doing well done has a shape that satisfies, clean and evident. Greek amphoras for wine or oil, Hopi vases that held corn are put in museums, but you know they were made to be used. The pitcher cries for water to carry, and a person for work that is real. Finally, I get a little choked up when I read that. I've got something called the Matchlider Scholarship. It's 2 hours of free list development help and 4 hours of free college essay help. I pair volunteer counselors like yourself with students who are identified as low income. We make sure that they show a fee waiver. We need 30 counselors and 40 low-income students to reach our goal this year of matching 200 students and counselors. We've matched around 170 or so. If you've got students, because right now we have a couple more counselor students, if you've got students who could use this, send this link to them, collegeessayguy.com/matchlighters. If you take just one call to action away from this, please help us get to this goal of, we basically have counselors who are sitting twiddling their thumbs waiting to help these students, or waiting to help some students, potentially your students. So please, if you know some students who might be interested in this, just send them to the site and have them fill out the application. We can pair them with a counselor within 24 hours. Who are these counselors? They are folks on my email list, folks from private schools, independent schools, public schools, independent counselors who are good at this and willing to help. And thank you to those who've already signed up who are on this call. This is the email. If you've got questions, info@collegeessayguy.com. That is your 141st resource. And we're at the Q&A. I'm going to close this so you can see my face, my ugly mug. And I'm curious to hear what questions folks have. So please jump in. What questions do you have? And I'm going to scroll back and see if folks do have questions. Actually, let me just scroll to the beginning. Well, titles on essays. Oh, good question, Cheryl. Titles, if it's generally I say no. Like I don't encourage students to do titles, but if it serves as a hook to the essay, like the student emailed me an essay once and it was like Barbie versus terrorism and the patriarchy. And I was like, I want to read that essay. So like, that's a cool title. So maybe yes. But if it's like the story of my life or like my journey, then I wouldn't say do it. But sometimes it can be really cool and you'll get mixed. I've gotten a lot of different people have different opinions on that. If it's a cool one. Let's see. I'm going to scroll down. I think I'm going to scroll down to the very bottom just to see the early questions. We have a creative writing teacher telling our kids their essays need to be creative stories. Not sure if that's true. I mean, to me, there are 4 qualities of a great essay, and you'll find them by Googling Great College Essay Test. So that's what I think. As long as the student is doing those 4 things, I think it can be a creative story, so to speak. Dealing with procrastination and the kids trying to write to the reader. Dealing with procrastination is something that I've never been able to solve. So if somebody else has something that you want to put in the chat box and solve this for us, I would be so grateful. How do you get a student to respond to your emails, for example? Great question. Lisa, there are way too many essays. So one thing that I love to have students do, and I talk about this more in the supplemental essays session, but it's basically create that supplemental essay tracker. And then rather than think about the individual prompts, ask yourself first, what are the main topics? Like, what are my super topics? And usually students have a couple things that they would like to use for lots of different prompts. So for one student, it might be this, their hiking thing, and they're able to connect hiking to a lot of different parts of themselves. And I've got a particular exercise that's in that session that I won't get into right now that helps students to basically thicken that content to come up with a lot of stuff they can say. They can take that topic, and this is going to sound really obvious, but they can use that for a lot of different supplemental essays. In fact, sometimes students are using their best topic in their personal statement, and it's an extracurricular activity, when that's going to work so well for so many supplements that I'll actually sometimes at the 11th hour be like, what else could we do for a personal statement topic? Because this is going to make a really good essay for all of these other schools. Because sometimes when they take that supplemental essay or that extracurricular topic and put it as their main statement, they don't actually have another thing to write about. So anyway, that's why I really encourage students to brainstorm big picture. What are all the topics? This may not be able to be done if it's way late in the process, but how can these super topics, use for multiple prompts? That's a very brief and not very good explanation of that. But I'm trying to go broad rather than deep right now with the Q&A. How do we avoid giving too much help? Philip, I've got a whole session on this, but here's the gist of it. There's a spectrum in my mind of writing the essays for students and not talking to them about the essays at all. Now, no one wants to be at either end. I don't think. I guess maybe some people write essays for students. Most of us are somewhere in the middle. Now, there are, in my mind, different, we'll call them interventions in the counseling sense. Whereas if we're trying to be more hands-off, we might ask open-ended questions. When it gets to be a little bit later in the process, we start to ask more leading questions. Then maybe we start to make more direct suggestions, and then we go make really direct suggestions like you definitely need to pick a different topic or cut the 3rd paragraph, right? Now, some people live more over here. Some counselors live more over here. So it's kind of so everything that I do in my courses and on my website is about equipping students with the resources, the exact resources that I'm sharing with you, so that we don't have to give too much help, so that it's empowering them with the tools. But then, of course, well, how do I help, figure out the flow of the essay? Well, try this exercise. How to revise the essay in 5 steps. If that doesn't work, sometimes they kind of need to be walked through it. How do we avoid giving too much help? That's like Zen in the art of the college essay. That's my constant question. That question keeps me up at night. Did I help too much? Did I not help enough? Could I help better? And everything on my website, everything that I've spent the last 13 years putting together is trying to answer that question. So collegeessayguy.com is my answer to that question. Dealing with comments to students from English teachers and quote unquote helpful parents. Without a rubric for giving people a sense of how to do this thing, we're kind of, what do you call it? Pulling at straws, grasping at straws. So Claire, I use this great college essay test, and I say, there are 4 things that I think a great college essay should have. If the essay is doing those 4 things, I'm good. But oftentimes the reason I'm objecting to it is because it's not doing one of those things very well. Okay. So it's also empowering the student. So rather than saying, Claire, like, hey, student, you should listen to me. I start to really ask the student questions that'll try and kind of debunk whatever this opinion is that I disagree with it. And usually that question begins with like, well, what do you feel like this essay is revealing about you? And if it's something that's redundant, that's in another part of the application, I'll point that out. Let's see, finding a topic that's not as common, also the language, hard for essays not to sound cliche. So my quick answer to this, Zainab, is I think an okay essay chooses a common topic, makes common connections, and uses common language. And that's maybe what you're talking about. Whereas this is just a simple framework. An outstanding essay or a great essay chooses an uncommon topic when possible, makes uncommon connections, and uses uncommon language. Now, of those 3, the student might not have an uncommon topic. It's kind of like you got to write what work with what you got. And they may not be a writer, right? It's a student that maybe, has limited, experience writing, for example. But every student can make uncommon connections. And the simple exercise is this. For whatever the topic is, let's say the topic is an extracurricular essay that's like on basketball. If the student can brainstorm for themselves, what are the common connections that someone would make in a basketball essay, discipline, hard work, perseverance, and decide not to write about those things and ask instead, what values, so again, values exercise, just put it in front of them. What values might we be able to focus on this essay that not everybody focuses on? How has basketball taught you about democracy? Or when democracy is not necessarily a good thing, when you need to just take it to the hoop, right? Not only in basketball, but also in life, right? So, think about also hard work. When is hard work actually not a good thing? Like maybe the student pushed themselves too hard and they need to learn about healthy boundaries. That to me is a much more interesting essay. So they can kind of start to be a little bit contrarian. Now you start to go, well, if every student does that, but no, there's so many other options, but by brainstorming and sort of setting alight all of the cliche options, suddenly the student now has this gap that they have to fill in. Rather than looking at how do I make these values better, throw out those values and find some new connections you can make. That's the short answer. How do you get the student to understand and identify their values? Rick, you know me, just do that exercise. Really, I find that's actually just to continue asking them, I think can be a great way of doing that. Davita's shopping their essays around and getting too many opinions, too many cooks, right? I asked the student to pick one person to go through the process with, and then when they're ready to actually solicit other opinions. But I haven't fully, sometimes students will do it, early on, not too much. If I like clarify with that for a student early on, that usually works out pretty well. Okay. Some of these questions I think I've answered. Some more questions have come in. Cool. How do you deal with situations when you understand that the parent is writing the essay? I haven't had that happen too much. So I don't have a ton of experience with that, or at least as far as I could tell. I'll ask the student. I would just, if I were in that situation, I would just ask the student, did your parent write this? And then if they did, say, okay, well, let's actually you write it. Okay. If they didn't, then that's it. If the student is lying to me, there's no way that I can know that. So I might be speaking out of naivete, and actually, a student has done that and I just didn't know. So I don't think I'm the best to give advice on that because I don't think I know. Water break. For supplemental essay prompts, Sarah, to answer your question, it's the Cialfo Chrome extension. I'll just paste the link in really quick so y'all can download it. It is. But I'm not getting paid for saying that. I just really love the resource. All right. How do you recommend crafting a conclusion? Another webinar? I think so. I think that's another resource that I haven't even written yet, because it's like, I have some thoughts about how to do it for formal papers, but I don't mean to be like in my book, but like in my book, I talk about the surprising but inevitable thing, and I give some examples of that. That's the most, honestly, Liz, that I've written on that. I don't think I've thought about that enough. I think that's actually a room where I can grow more. Is there a point in students including a link to online work? Will they click it? I don't know. I think it's okay to send it because it's like, hey, I've done some extra stuff, but what do you think about writing about depression or overcoming eating disorders or other very personal stuff? So Jamie, my sense is I think I've become more conservative as I've been in this for longer. The longer that I'm in this, the more conservative I get. I feel like if a student doesn't have to talk about it, then I want to ask them, what other things could we write about? And I do that without, this is the very fast version. I do that without shaming the student. I want to like hear their story. And if it's early on in the process, I want them to write about it because I think writing is a great way to heal and a great way to just like hold up a mirror to nature. But, when colleges are looking at 2 students, 3.5, 3.5, depression, eating disorder, not depression, eating disorder. It's like somebody calls it the clone trick, like clone yourself. Imagine writing about that and not writing about that. Does one get in over another? Maybe. Having said that, you've got to proceed with caution. Is this the student's deepest story, the thing that they feel like they must write about? If so, again, A and B, write about it. Does it end up being your college essay? I don't know. There's a lot in the college essay forum and also the college admissions counselor group on Facebook about this. People have a lot of opinions on it, and I'd recommend hearing what a lot of different folks say. Mine is sort of what you can probably hear me saying is like err on the side of caution. What other topics could we pursue? If the student does decide to write about it, it doesn't need to get super specific, but I'm going to recommend that challenge structure. 25% on the challenge, 50% what you did, 25% on what you learned, broadly speaking. A student came to me a couple weeks ago and was like, here are the 3 things that I've, the 3 mental health issues that I've had. And that's what the whole essay was about. It felt like, a lot. And then she had another like killer line that was like, halfway into the essay. And I was like, tell me about that. That's what I want to hear about. So that wasn't about the mental health issues. Now, what she's probably going to end up doing is using that killer line as a starting point, and then maybe mentioning some of the stuff that had her taking time off because she did end up having to take 9 days away from school. And that's going to be on her transcript. That's worth working in, I think. Of course, it can go in the additional info section. Okay. I know we're over time. I'm going to take 3 more minutes and answer questions. How do you deal with parents who try to keep editing while you were editing with the student? I tell them to get off the dock. Hey, would you mind letting me work with this student? I think I really want this to be this student's process. I'm really good at doing that. Would you be willing to not edit this? I also don't share Google Docs with parents. I ask the student, at what point do you want to share with your parents? Do you want to share with your parents? Parents get frustrated. When can we see the essay? I don't know. Ask your son, ask your daughter, ask your human that lives next to you. Go knock on their door and ask them. I really want to empower the student. Parents are usually cool with this. They usually get it. Not all of them. And that's what brings up these questions. I don't know how to solve all this. I know it's frustrating. How much of vulnerability is appropriate? When you read it, do you feel kind of at the end of the essay like, oh, or do you feel like, wow? That's the really simple answer. As long as, but it's the same thing that I'm suggesting, the same medicine. Challenges at the start. What'd you do about it? What'd you learn? If the student's essay is off topic, what's the best way to talk or suggest the student to change the topic without hurting his or her work? It depends. If it's the personal statement, I don't care because I don't care about the topic. I just say, pick topic of your choice. If it's off topic for the why us, I'll just be like, here, first of all, I have like a whole guide on the YS essay. And I'm like, please go back to the guide and actually read it this time. And then I'll be like, here's a great YS essay. Do you see how specific it is? Usually it's like specifics. And so if it's off topic in that sense, I'll be like, I think that you can probably cut all of this, and I'll highlight the stuff and do the suggesting feature on Google Docs and like hit delete and be like, and I think that what you're going to need is like 10 more specific things or 3 more specific things or 2 more specific things. If it's like a 100-word YS. The best way to talk to or suggest, it also depends on what time of year it is. If we're sitting in April or May, I'm like, so why'd you choose this topic? Like, what's meaningful to you about it? If it's like October, November, like 2 weeks from a deadline, I'm like, I don't think this is showing the best parts of you. I think you're missing an opportunity here. Maybe I'll say it that directly. But what I'll do is I'll like go back to like, okay, what are the other topics that you may want to consider for this? How do you work it for this prompt? Okay. That goes back to that super topics idea. The rubric that I use for essays, the Great College Essay Test. I'll just link it to you. collegeessayguide.com, TGCET. Evan will follow up with an email to all y'all with all of these resources. I have a student, last question. I have a student who wrote his whole essay on one uncommon topic, beautifully written, but included no aha moment. How would you go back and add values and connection? So I would ask the student, so what, right? Say we need, like, have them write past the end of the essay. We need a so what, and then just go back and trim. I know that sounds super obvious and basic, but we need to know so what. Tell them the essay's not finished. And then chances are, then in 650 words, some of that is like set up. So even though it's beautifully written, he's attached to parts of it. Maybe you're attached to parts of it. Ask them, so what? If you really want to like get him thinking, and this is like a thinker or writer, give him Ira Glass's on storytelling. He's got this beautiful 4-part video series, 5 minutes each. And he talks about, we need a beautiful narrative, and then we need a so what to make a great story. And if you show that to the student, they might see that, yes, I've got half of it, but I've not got the whole thing. So that's what I got. All right. That was the 118th resource. And I hope this has been useful. I'll follow up with an email with more. If you've got questions, feel free to hit us up at info@collegeessayguide.com. And good luck. Have a great rest of the season. Talk soon.